Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. My name is Alex Sloane, and I'm an Associate Curator here at MOCA. It is my incredible pleasure to introduce Carl Craig.
What up, doe? What up, doe? What up, doe?
Carl is a multi-hyphenate artist, DJ, producer, and all-around cultural icon. And this week we are celebrating the opening of his incredible exhibition, Party After Party. If you haven't seen it yet in person, please do so. And you will probably hear a little bit over the course of this evening, but it is on view till 8 p.m. this evening and then through July 23rd. And really, it's been my profound privilege to work with Carl and his whole team for the past 2 years to realize this second chapter of Party After Party. I wanted to take this quick opportunity to acknowledge and thank the whole team who've made this possible. First of all, Carl's creative team, specifically the incredible Haji Craig and Nazi Nazhand, as well as John Torres, who collaborated with Carl on the original lighting design, and Christophe Chappelle, who lent his expertise in sound engineering remotely when, at the very last minute, he was unable to be here in person. I would also like to thank Kelly Kivland, who was the curator who originally commissioned Party After Party for Dear Beacon, and Randy Gibson of Dear Art Foundation, who was here throughout install and was utterly invaluable at for reconfiguring this work here at MOCA. I would also like to thank my amazing colleagues and collaborators here at the museum, Anastasia Khan, who has been my right hand throughout, Caitlin Mitchell and Jason Underhill, who oversaw the installation, and without whom the exhibition would simply not have happened. Calvin Anderson, who's here this evening, and his whole AV team. Looking forward to our concert series, Party After Party Sessions. I want to thank our co-presenters, Insomniac and Secret Project, and our performance production team led by Amelia Charter with Brian Dang and Michele Huizar. I hope everyone here tonight takes the opportunity to buy tickets to Party After Party Sessions. They will be on sale later this week. The incredible lineup can be seen in full on the wall to your right, but they will be really some of the parties of the summer. Finally, I would like to thank our chief curator, Clara Kim, for her insights and feedback throughout this process, and to our director, Johanna Burton, who has been exceptionally supportive of this project from its inception. A few practical matters before we begin. Carl and I will be chatting for about 30 minutes, and then we'll turn it over as Q&A. Please come with your questions. Following the Q&A, Carl will be signing the Party After Party limited edition LP, together with the shirts that I am sporting tonight, and tote bags, et cetera, all which can be purchased through Kim at the bookstore here in the front. And that's all. So thanks. Let's go. Oopsie.
That was a nice job.
I tried.
Yeah, I couldn't do that job.
Okay.
Yep.
So you and I have done this quite a lot, but let's start in Detroit, which is the city where you grew up and which has been so influential on your work. How did you go about capturing Detroit's spirit and musical subculture within Party After Party, and how did you translate that energy in community into a museum context?
Well, since you're British, you know what Marks and Spencer's is, right?
Yes.
So I have these Marks and Spencer socks that have cards on them to represent Detroit. So it's always in me, the whole culture of Detroit, whether it's from car culture to Detroit club culture, which isn't huge. It seems bigger from the outside than what it actually is. So from when I started going to parties back in '86 by myself at parties. When I first went to clubs, I was working with my cousin doing lights for him at clubs and icebreakers and stuff like that.
This is when you were doing lights for Jeff Mills. I always loved that
Exactly,
story.
yeah. So Jeff Mills, I had met Jeff when I was about 14 or 15, and this was right before he got on the radio, and I didn't know the importance of it, but it was cool that I was sitting there and I still have this memory. So This is when underage kids could go into the club. I don't think you can go to the club anymore as a 14 or 15-year-old. But I was in there just helping out with the lights. And when there was a lull in time, I would get out on the dance floor and, act 14 or 15 years old. And I had to wait until the end of the night. So, props to my mom for letting me stay out till 2 in the morning to do lights. But that was a big, I think that was a big influence for me, not only to be able to be in the club, but also that same cousin had a big record called Technicolor, which is one of the first Detroit techno records. It was more electro, but it was a big record. If you guys know Sir Mix-a-Lot, Baby's Got Back, it uses elements that are either from or similar to what was done with Juan Atkins and my cousin Doug Craig. So I got some experience early on, and it wasn't strange for me to go to clubs when I was of the age to go to clubs. So Detroit clubs were one thing. This is before warehouse parties, or before I knew anything about warehouse parties, and going to Chicago to go to the Music Box and to see how they threw parties in Chicago. But going as a musician, I was a guitar player. I started, producing records, and my mama got me my first synth.
Yeah, which is, you can blame her for it all.
Say that?
You can blame her for it all.
I blame her for everything. She gets mad at me for blaming her, but gets happy when I praise her. So I'm praising Mama right now. These experiences from the early age, and then going through into making my own music, and sitting on the floor of Derek May's loft, and we have synthesizers all around us, and making music, traveling to England for the first time in 1998. 1989.
Yeah,
I got the numbers turned around. 1989 was the first time I went to London, and going to Club Heaven there, and going to Club Heaven in Detroit. Everywhere's got a Heaven Club. So all of these experiences before I started DJing had a big impact on me for when and prepared me for when I could go on my own and travel as a DJ to Japan and to Amsterdam and to Belgium and to Germany and all these places that I've been through all this time. So the warehouse parties became something in Detroit after I saw the rave thing happen in the UK.
Okay.
So I was in the UK when they were flying helicopters to get to the raves. Paul Oakenfold would get out of the helicopter to play the gig or whatever. And when they had the whole, so I was there for the poll tax riots, and I was also there when, I forgot what the law was, when you couldn't be driving on the road with more than 3 people in the car after midnight.
Yeah,
and it was like an anti-rave thing.
Yeah. It's all trying to curb rave culture in the UK.
Yes, exactly. So, all of these things came into my being me, and everything that comes into, the piece. So it's Detroit, and, me sleeping couch surfing on people's couches in London, and, eating other people's food, and, taking my shoes off in other people's houses when I should have probably kept my shoes on. So.
Well, I think that's what, is so fantastic about Party After Party, is that it kind of touches on both the great parts of being a DJ and also the less sexy parts, the things that about, but which the audience, the crowd, and the club doesn't get any insight on.
And I feel that's important. I don't know how many of you know some of my Twitter comments. They got pretty racy and heavy at one point, but everything that I said was completely honest. And I like the backstage thing. So if I'm watching a documentary about Kiss, the band, I want to see what's happening backstage, and I want to let people know what happens backstage as well. I want to give them the backstage of my life, the backstage of, not to sit around and just explain everything, but, just to throw out some nuggets, and then you really get the real deal, So with the piece, with the after party is giving you the real deal, the real nuggets that are involved in being a DJ. Tinnitus is the main thing. Sitting in a hotel room by yourself, and there's nothing on TV in English but CNN, and they're repeating the news cycle every 15 minutes, and that'll drive you freaking out of your mind right there,
Seriously, night after night of CNN, same segment being repeated.
Just repeat it over and over. They might change the person who's giving you the information, but it's exactly the same information. Trying to go to sleep and get sleep with your ears ringing like crazy, but you only have like 2 or 3 hours to sleep before either you have to get up to catch your flight, or the hotel's like, okay, 10 o'clock checkout today, get out. So these are what those experiences what makes the after party. So the after party is like that backstage pass to see the reality of what it takes to be Carl Craig. Everybody wants the after party to be the villa party, but the after party really is
the whole tone of the piece shifts in that after party, and I think that's really, really special. You think it's going to, you have that euphoric moment,
yeah,
and then it flips, and I think that's what kind of really layers into these different readings of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit, so obviously Party After Party was first commissioned for Dear Art Foundation in 2020. Mm-hmm. This iteration here at MOCA is sort of your second chapter, is how you've described it. How was it to revisit the work after 3 years and to remix it for a very different space?
Right, so this piece and on the vinyl, the piece is, it cycles.
Yeah.
So there's certain elements that are the same every time it cycles. There's, like, say, the bass element that cycles differently twice. Every time it comes through, it changes only twice. There are other cycles that change 5 or 6 times. And then we have all this other stuff that is controlled by Max DSP that changes positioning and things. But for how this is tuned to be in a place like this, it's really hard to mix in stereo. Yeah. It's extremely hard to mix in stereo. So over the last 3 years, I've been actually working on perfecting a stereo mix. So it's interesting to come back and hear this in this space because, it's not like I haven't heard it consistently for the last 3 years. It's just that I understood when we got here where I could position things where I want to hear it from me concentrating on the stereo aspect of it. We did the original mixes in Atmos to digital, and then collapsed the Atmos down to stereo. So the room, you get this Atmos recording of the sound of Dia, and Dia is all concrete. So
very reflective.
So the reverb time in the room is like 8+ seconds, and the way the sounds are tuned in Dia are going to be different because the room is bigger than this room. The room has way more reverb. So this room is actually tighter because of the wood ceiling and also the dimensions. So I could tune things and hear things a bit clearer and more direct in this room, but also because of that, it gave me like, okay, this sound should come from the ceiling now. where the sound didn't come from the ceiling the last time. So I tuned some things to be specific to this room, and that's how the piece will live until, at least the day that I can't hear anymore, and somebody else has to be the authenticator of the project.
Thinking specifically about the sound and the composition, your music references many different genres: work songs, blues, soul, jazz, funk, disco, techno. And consequently, Party After Party can be discussed as sort of a monument to the legacy of black music in America. And was this something that you were thinking about when you were making the composition, or is it something that, now you feel more in retrospect?
I feel like I'm part of the legacy of
100%.
Black American music, So I'm always representing in some ways or another. So I'm always representing me as an artist, but I'm always representing the influences before me. So I'll talk about my mentors. I have no problem with talking about all of my mentors, and I have no problem if my enemies make great records too. Because if you make a hot record, you make a hot record. If you make a great piece of art, it's a great piece of art. There shouldn't be any hate over that. You might not like the person, but you can still, and I'm totally, I've lived with removing the artist from the art. And this is part of what's been annoying recently with, all the cancel culture and everything, is that, the mentality of not being able to separate the artist from the art. You don't have to like the artist. You could love what the artist was able to get, because it's a moment in time that's been done. And I feel that what I do might not sound like I listen to Sly Stone. It might not sound like I listen to Otis Redding, but those have had the same type of impacts on me as George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic and Zapp and Derek May and Kevin Saunderson and Juan Atkins and all the pioneers of music that you can easily find pinpoint between techno and funk music or soul music.
So taking that a little further, you and I have discussed how Afrofuturism features, and sort of as a concept features in your work. How do you see Party After Party as envisioning an Afrofuture?
The concept of this being a museum piece is definitely some Afrofuturism, because we weren't even thinking about the future of techno music being in a museum situation. So music itself, most people see it as being something for commerce. It's all about how many records you sold, how much you see it all the time. Nowadays, this artist is platinum, the most platinum selling artist or diamond selling artist. So to take black music, to take techno music, Detroit techno music, and put it into a museum has made it possible for it to be preserved. And preserved in a way that you're not just saying, okay, I heard that record before, and you're throwing it to the side. Even though you can sell 1 million copies of a record, the 1 million that you sell might not be to the same type of people who are going to walk through this door. Yeah. So it's another total change of who's going to. So I was saying earlier that I like the fact that there's, I've seen strollers here.
So many kids, it's really beautiful.
And wheelchairs, So the influences that come, that are going to be given to these people that are in wheels, it's definitely a bigger, a broader range than what the possibility will be of getting it played on a top 40 station or
record sales or Spotify.
Record sales, or you got to do a video and TikTok video. Is your record going to be the hot TikTok song? Nah, you know what? I'd rather I'd rather for it to be here because the people who come, I think it'll have a bigger impression on them than it will to be disposable. And again, so many people look at music as being disposable, and I don't like that at all.
In some of our earlier conversations, you referenced the Basquiat, Jean-Michel Basquiat quote that the medicine men live in caves. Mm. And, essentially that, a DJ is the medicine man who draws folks into the club. Yeah. Is this really how you see yourself as an artist, to draw a community in?
Yeah, DJs are kind of witch doctors. We're preachers, we're witch doctors, we're shamans, we're all of that. There's a lot of power in being a DJ, and I don't think that it's even been 10% of it's been touched yet.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of sort of critical discourse about the influence and the sort of cultural impact of DJs sort of in a more critical creative dialogue.
Yeah, so when I first started going to raves, when I first started seeing raves, I remembered from when I was a kid in the South, my grandparents had a church on their farm. Both my grandmother and grandfather were preachers. And one year, I guess I was 12 or something, she took me to a revival. And a revival is a big, gigantic tent with a whole bunch of people dancing in it. And people getting the Holy Ghost and all that. And I remember the preacher put his hands on me. And I mean, the energy was so powerful. He put his hand on my head and he pushed me back. I thought it was funny at first. And he pushed me back. And I just started crying. And it was just like this emotional thing. And I've seen DJs have that same sort of reaction from the dance floor. Somebody like Frankie Knuckles, like you play the right song at the right time, and it can really pull the emotion from you. So I think that's only 10%. We haven't really seen the potential of what the DJ can have. The DJ could be he could be a cult leader, or he can be a savior.
They certainly have the power to infuse that energy into a crowd.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And yes, medicine men in caves. Yeah, yeah. That's...
Sort of, in addition, obviously, to the sound, there are several elements that are really integral to party after party. The LED light columns, the louvers that bring in these shafts of natural light, which I just adore, and then the scrim wall as well. Each of these elements was really, keenly thought through and considered. Can you speak a little bit about how each of those elements came together, why you chose those, why it all came together?
Those pieces came based on the dimensions of Dia. So Dia has two entrances to the room. One entrance is from the back, where there's a bay door. That area is used as a gallery. So you can come in through that way, from upstairs, downstairs, through that gallery and in. Or you can come in through the front, which has a stairwell that specifically enters right into the space. So the black scrim is to keep the reveal contained. So when you walk in and it's dark, you just see darkness. And you have to find your way because of the sound, because of what you hear sonically. Or how the lighting looks through the scrim itself. I believe we had curtains as well on the.
I think you did. I mean, here it's sort of like it's very much an architectural intervention. The scrim, you're pushing visitors either side so that they're not immediately going into the sweet spot at the center. They have to traverse it, and that also I think helps in the movement around the whole space.
Sure, it does. And the lighting again is something to guide as well as to give atmosphere. But what I have been most surprised by, and this happened after the piece opened again and during the pandemic. So it opened in March 2020. The same day, Maritz von Oswald and I did a live performance, and then within a week we were shut down because the pandemic happened and everything got shut down. So when it opened again in August, that's when I realized the piece had taken on something else, because people were so excited to get out of the house, so excited to get to Beacon and to have an experience that, you know, my piece was an integral part of their experience. But when I put the sweet spot where it is, and it's revealed by the lights in the ceiling, that was to reveal the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. But it became the center of the piece for people coming because it gave them the opportunity to be in the spotlight. And that wasn't the intent. The intent wasn't to stand there and wait for the light to come. The intent was that you were supposed to be guided by the music, and then you had to reveal, and if you're in the right place, you're in the right place. But I love the fact that it did take on this different interpretation, you know, and that's with my music. When I made Bug in a Bass Bin, I had no problem when I heard people playing it at 45 when it was intended to be at 33, because, you know, I was happy to hear the reinterpretation. And that reinterpretation, when Fabio in London was playing all those hardcore, all the hardcore beat stuff, he was playing Bug in a Bass Bin at 45, and Goldie heard it, and it flipped in his mind, and then he went back and said, I got to recreate this, and then that was the start of drum and bass. So that was great, you know. So I've already had that experience with that. So, you know, with making a piece and the people interpret it and find their own interpretation from it, then I loved it, and I found that people were doing interpretive dance, and, you know, they would take these videos and try to make their own art from my art, and I love it.
It's incredible. It becomes a social sculpture in that capacity because, you know, people want to interact and stand in the light to, taking it in turn. I loved it at the gala, people taking it in turns in their finery and all that, you know, they're all glammed up, or if there are kids, it's like a moth to a flame in that capacity. You want to be in that light. Yes,
yeah, and there's on the opening day there was we were doing something with the film crew, I guess.
Yeah.
And I saw this kid out of the side of my eye, and he's just waiting. And finally, he gets his opening, and comes up and he goes, I really love your piece. It's like, yeah, that's great. And I didn't go any further, like, yeah, what did you like about it? Did the bass make you feel something? Make you feel warm inside? What was it? I need to know this. No, but that's great.
Yeah.
And it's even, I respect it even more because a kid isn't gonna BS you. A kid's gonna like straight up say, okay, especially if he's waiting there and he's got to say something about it, then he really felt something. Another thing that's interesting about the piece, and I realized it on this one, this iteration of it is, so when you come to the sweet spot, and the bass is coming from the 4 speakers, the subs are coming from the 4 speakers, but they're coming from the ceiling as well. It's coming from the ceiling as well. So when you're in the middle, you equally get it, and then you walk a little outside of the middle, and the bass develops in a different way. In some cases, it becomes stronger. But a kid that's this tall is gonna
hear it in a very different way.
It might be what we're maybe getting in our stomach and our chest is hitting him in his ears, you know? And then someone who's taller than me is gonna have a different perception of it as well. And that's cool, you know? It's like anybody who's got ears that are like this usually can capture the sound better, sound engineers with ears that are cupped turn out to do a great job, maybe a better job than I do, where the sound is going right past my ears, No,
it's pretty special in that capacity. Coming back to the sort of positioning of this work within a museum context, there's been a lot of sort of discussion about how your work references minimalism, minimal sculpture, sound art. What is your response to this framing? And do you think that sort of visual art and art history have taken on more of an influence for you?
Richie Houghton had started this whole kind of minimalist thing in music for techno music, which is great, which we just pretty much call strip back. It was just stripping everything back. And it touched me. Basic Channel was a big part of that too. I think they were actually doing that thing before Richie gave a name to it. Yeah. It was just called Basic Channel Sound. From a child, I've been more interested in minimal art because I grew up in the 70s. Yeah. So what I was seeing was, pretty much work that was new or within a decade old at the Detroit Institute of Arts of Donald Judd or,
The white men of minimalism.
But that's fine. I mean, we were listening to Kraftwerk, so it's like I don't have any problem with getting my influences from wherever I need to get from, and I'm not going to be a influence bigot. So I'll take it from wherever I can get it because I listen to Peter Frampton, I listen to, Stones, I listen to all that stuff as well as Muddy Waters and Sun Ra, who's on my shirt here. So, from minimal art to what you would consider, I guess, in some cases, some sort of minimal architecture. Yeah. I have a Mies van der Rohe in Detroit. Le Corbusier, I love his work. One of your patrons has a Lautner, and I was in there, which was incredible. And I probably have more of an influence from architecture than I do actually from sculpture or paintings.
Well, certainly the piece itself is hugely influenced on the architecture that it finds itself.
Yes, and that's an important factor when we were deciding where this was going to be installed, because there was the option, because there's all these skylights in here too, but it was the option to be here or the option to be in another room, and because of the columns in the other room, that works much better for the piece. Yeah. And that's the philosophy of when you do a warehouse party. You can't just, start building stuff, and you got to find the right room to make it work. You just appropriate the room. Yeah, literally. And that's what we pretty much did, was appropriate the room, and then,
And it is a literal warehouse, coming from its, industrial roots and police storage facility at one point as well, which I always find interesting. Right. Sort of on that vein, one of the things that really hit me when I first saw the piece at DEAR in 2020 was how sort of the durational aspect of it, together with the spatialization of the sound really took on a sculptural form. You can feel it. It's a bodily experience. It's not something that is just auditory. And, is this, and the more time you spend it, it's really a piece that kind of begs to be spend certainly half an hour, the cycle, 32 minutes, or ideally longer, because then each time you hear it, you hear different nuances. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that the sort of sound sculpture becomes more distinct as you spend more time with it. These things that you're thinking about when you were composing the piece, and also that you think you will take into future projects.
Yeah. So part of the composition of the piece, I had to do it at DIA in the space, And composing in the space made me understand the limitations of the room. So with transient sounds, high-end transient sounds like hi-hats, if I did a 16th hi-hat pattern, then it would just be a wash of just sibilance all through the room. And through testing, through composition in the room, it made it where I was able to figure out what sounds worked, what tempo works for the piece because of the size of the room, because you can get a build-up of sound from low end if the tempo's too fast. But with Dia being in Beacon, so far away outside of New York, then it was a destination. You went there and you spent your day there. Mm-hmm. So I'm totally fine with the idea of people here coming from work and bringing their bologna sandwiches and stuff and sitting in the side of the room and just, I don't know if you allow food here, but...
The GAs and security may have some things to say about people eating in it, but the essence is there.
Yeah, the essence is there. So yeah, I love the idea that, you can just shack up in one side of the room and that's your area, and then you can just, vibe for, a cycle, 2 cycles, the whole day,
Yeah, no, I've seen several people like lying on the floor, just like absorbing it all.
That's great.
Like it's really like just spending time, just letting it wash over them, which I think is phenomenal.
That's great. Yeah. So you don't have anybody that's going to come with a bucket of water and just throw it on them. Like, get out of here.
People can lie down. That's no problem. Thinking more like, we spoke earlier that you did lights for Jeff Mills, but has light always been something that you've been interested in alongside your music, because it is such a critical aspect of this piece, and something that I know you collaborated with John Torres on the lighting design for the columns, but that together with the natural light is. Where does that influence come from, or that inspiration?
I'm a music guy, so I pay more attention to music, and my experience with lighting comes from working, for my cousin as a kid. But when I was working with George, when we had the meeting about what we were going to do with this, the most impact that I wanted was based on strobes.
Okay.
Because my idea of a party is a dark room and a strobe light. And the music is doing all the work, and then you hit the strobe, and the strobe gives you that impact. It kind of kicks you in the ass and makes you like, okay, I know where I am now, or it's like, yeah. So with the light that comes from the ceiling for the natural light, the initial and the whole thing again with the piece is my experience from traveling and playing the world for the last 30 odd years. So one of the biggest impacts for a light show that I saw has zero to do with lasers, zero to do with anything else, but it was at Panorama Bar when the peak of the track happens at 8 o'clock in the morning. They open the windows.
It's pretty spectacular, that moment, like the Berlin's like sunrise.
Yeah. So the way Berlin can be, it can be dark all the time. So to get that bit of light in there. Anybody who's seen Blade, and they have, the blood coming from the ceiling and everybody's bathing in the blood. It felt like that, that kind of dark thing, but it's quite fantastic to feel that. And it was something that I had to do to accentuate the piece.
Going back to the idea of sort of DJ as sort of, preacher almost, or as this mystic shaman, it is that flood of natural light can be very spiritual. It's like this joy. It's like and it's particularly special in a museum where often you can't bring in natural light because of the conservation issues. Where you don't want to expose a painting or a drawing or something, a photograph to natural light. And then it's, as you say, you talk about the appropriation of the building, that natural light then celebrates that space.
Yeah, so at Dia, it was a whole wall of windows.
Yeah.
And here it's the skylights. And the whole wall of windows made sense at Dia because of where it's positioned.
Yeah.
And the skylights, of course, make more sense here because, the California sun. And the California sun is playing a big part in how this piece works here in sunny California.
It's almost like a sundial. You can kind of as it moves
Sure.
across the day.
Sure. And something else that is important to the piece is the incidental sound that comes from just, like at Dia, there was a train that went by, and I wanted to include the time that the train went by in the actual sequence of the piece, but it doesn't work with the tempo.
Can't get the
So
trains to...
when a train goes by, it's not going to be on beat particularly, but it'll be right on time. And when we're in this piece, we hear fire trucks go by, and it's like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's
And sometimes
perfect.
the sirens coming down Alameda really add something. It's pretty good.
And even me, who created the piece, I'm thinking, damn, that sounds like it's in the piece. So I really love that. That I've been experimenting with working with time differences as well musically. So not in the sense of it being time signature, but how many bars can be used and then make it off kilter, but for it to still be in 4/4 time. So I've been working with that for forever. So, a fire truck coming in and it comes in out of time, but then it comes in time and then it goes out of time. It's beautiful. I love it.
There's beautiful moments. And as I'm just conscious about time, but I want to talk a little bit about the concerts, party after party sessions.
Yep.
So this was something that you've curated this phenomenal lineup of 3 different concerts. For you, what does it mean to have the possibility of those live shows in dialogue with the exhibition, so that people can come and have a great party here, but also come and see your piece at the same time? Yeah.
To do these parties, I'm happy to, have my friends come.
No, it's a celebration of.
It's a celebration, yeah, it is, and to give the whole Detroit experience, even though King Britt's not from Detroit and Maurice Madan Oswald aren't from Detroit, the connection is there. With King Britt, it'll be more modular, synthesized bass as well as Afrofuturism. And then Moritz is, Detroit-Berlin connection has been happening for 20, 25
decades,
years.
Yeah.
So it's important to me to present that on the first show. Then the second show is Kenny Larkin and Kyle Hall and Remarkable. Kenny Larkin I've known since the beginning. We basically started off our careers together. And then the third one with Moody Man and DJ Minx and Erno. And that's, everybody loves freaking Moody Man, I didn't realize when I put out his first album, The Silent Introduction, I didn't realize the power that he harnessed, and it just gets stronger and stronger every time because he is not only a great character and he lives his character, but he is just such an expert in setting the tone musically. And what I like about Moody Man is that he's got this Detroit thing where he won't even care whether you dance or not, This is for the people who really know, and Underground Resistance had that, for those who know, So, or somewhere in Detroit, where they won't tell you the address. It's just somewhere in Detroit. That's like a real Detroit thing. And I'm glad that we can present these Detroit moments and this Detroit feeling here in sunny Los Angeles.
And here in the museum, and I think that is also, I hope that it's an opportunity for new audiences to experience your work, to experience these phenomenal artists, and also people who are just really, really excited about seeing them, of which there seem to be a lot. So I am very excited.
Good.
And my final question really is, what are you, if you had a hope for the exhibition or for people's experience of the exhibition, what would it be?
Find your own zone.
Yeah.
Find your own zone. The next places that the piece goes it'll always be in the cards to what is actually happening in the club scene locally. And when we put it at Beacon, I had the chance to put it in Manhattan, and that didn't make any sense because there's already clubs in Manhattan. So I want people to get the feeling, but not have any direct competition to say, oh, well, I went to the bar and they were playing something like this or whatever. It's like, this is the whole thing that you're going to get, and I want people to get that vibe when they come in and find their own vibe.
Yeah, I think that, I just love watching people experiencing it. And it is an experiential piece. It's not something that you can just passively observe, which I think is pretty special. On that note, I think we have a microphone if there are any questions or any, 1 minute, let me just bring it through.
So I heard that you have tinnitus, and I was just wondering how it affected you when you first had it, and if you had to take any time off from work and DJing because of tinnitus, and how does it affect your work now, and does it bother you at all now, or are you just completely used to it?
I work through it. I power through it. The tinnitus is there, and when it's worse is like when I have bad sinus problems. But I just have to work through it. What I do is music, but I come from Detroit, so you got to hustle. And I look at it like if I had a sprained ankle. Isaiah Thomas played one of the championship games against the Bulls with a sprained ankle, as far as I understand, and he played the whole game. So I got respect for people who do that. I guess I have a grim idea that I'm going to lose my hearing at some point anyway. So why not lose it doing something I love and spreading the techno gospel,
Has it gotten worse over time?
Some cases it feels like it has. I do everything that I can in my spare time in order to counter it. So when I listen to TV, I listen to the TV very low so I can interpret what they're saying, and then that kind of helps me to tune what I'm doing. And then also, I actually sat there with tones and found which tones are being masked because of my tinnitus, and then I try to hear through it. So one of the things that I had compared it to is if you're driving in the rain and it's a big storm and your windshield wiper is doing this and stuff, you still can't see, but you try to look between the raindrops, between the parts that clutter and the parts that kind of open up but then close up again. So that's my philosophy about it with me, is that I'm always trying to see between the raindrops.
Well, first of all, actually, I really wanted to thank you for your work.
Thank you. Can you speak up a bit?
Yes, for sure.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Because these speakers aren't pointing towards me, so I'm
Yeah.
actually hearing that come from the back of the room, so I need for you to speak louder.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
My main question is, you said that DJ culture has not yet reached its potential, what it could be, right? And I wonder, in your opinion, why is that so at the moment, and what it could be?
I still feel that the audience has a big say on what a DJ does. So a DJ can get very, sometimes very apprehensive about what he's doing. So if the crowd comes in and their idea of what a DJ is just to play the hits, then that's going to influence how the DJ is going to play. I've seen Theo Parrish play just the most eccentric music, and play it in the wrong place, it'll clear the floor. Play it in the right place, and everybody will love it. Like I said, with Kenny Dixon, it doesn't matter whether you're on the dance floor or not, and that's the power that I'm seeing with as far as molding. But then somebody like Derek May will find a way to push you in a way that'll lead you towards the music. So I've seen him get in fights with the sound man and then put on a record that made people just lose their minds while he's in the middle of fighting with this with the sound man over touching the EQs or something. So, I've seen it where it's possible. So John 3:16, right? One of the most famous, I don't know what it says, but you go to a football game and they're like John 3:16. That's the hit. That's like the DJ playing, a hit for a preacher. The preacher, Sunday service on Easter, he has to do the Easter sermon, But then there's other times where he finds his way from a sermon, but then he goes outside of it and then comes right back in. And by the time he comes right back in, he can have you so into what he's saying. And that's the same way with the DJ, is that I feel that you give him the opportunity to take you away and then pull you right back in. It's the same as what I've seen happen in church.
To follow up this, right? In your opinion, what is delicious, like a really good DJ composition, the whole DJ set? What elements you are looking for? Like, how do you like it to be open? What should happen in the middle? How should it close?
Yeah, that's interesting. The arrangement is important, of course. At Get Lost in Miami, and I love when I can get influenced by DJs. Even though I've been playing for a long, I never walk in and say like, oh yeah, well I'm the baddest ass motherfucker around. I'm not doing the Rick James thing. But I had gotten to the point recently where I play off the energy of the person before me. And at Get Lost, DJ Harvey came on after me, and the first thing he put on was Jimi Hendrix' Star Spangled Banner. And I said, that's it. That is it. Because I used to play, pieces from John Williams from Star Wars, or I play something that had, what was it called? I think it was Darth Vader's March or something. And I had fun doing it until somebody would tweet something else, say, why did Carl play blah, 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 blah? And it's like, then I got pulled out of my zone and out of my element because I'm listening to some fool that didn't like it,
One person on Twitter with a big... One person on Twitter.
Person on Twitter. And then, then you might get the rest of the hyenas that jump on top and, well, I saw him this, that, and the other. So that, I really believe, is the most important element of being a DJ, is drawing the line in the sand. I'm going to put this on. If you don't like it, sorry, but you cleanse the palate too. And that's the most important part of it. The rest of it, if I understood it, then I would be a better DJ.
Okay, I know that we have some records that Carl is going to sign, so I think we're going to move on to this part because I'm very aware of time. But I just wanted to give a huge round of applause to Carl Craig.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. I have to stand up and take it. Thank you very much.